Mavis returned from the works to find a pained-looking Thomas at the sheds. "Good gracious," she cried. "What's the matter with you?"
"Boiler ache,"
strained Thomas. "We took on water from a standpipe yesterday," said the driver. "Must have furred up his tubes." Mavis gave Thomas a sympathetic look. "Ah, Mavis! Back in fine form, I see."
"Thank you, sir," she smiled. "I feel much better."
"The same can't be said for Thomas," he frowned. "His first train is due out soon. Could you take Annie and Clarabelle instead?"
Mavis froze. Me, sir? I've never even pulled coaches before."
"I'm well aware of that," the Fat Controller said. "But the other engines aren't available, and the train cannot be late." Mavis didn't want to disappoint the Fat Controller, especially after he had paid for her repairs. She put on a brave face and said,
"I'll do my best, sir."
The Fat Controller smiled. "That's a good engine. I knew I could count on you. Toby will take over after the first run, and you can head to the quarry after. Off you go." Annie and Clarabelle were horrified when they heard the news.
"Not a diesel! Not a diesel!"
they wailed from the carriage sheds. Daisy's insults still lingered fresh in their minds. Henrietta was most annoyed. "Now that's no way to act, girls," she scolded. "Give young Mavis a chance. She's a kind soul."
"Has she ever so much as coupled to a coach before?"
sniffed Annie.
"She's put the most troublesome trucks in their place," retorted Henrietta. "So I doubt she'd have issues with two snooty coaches. Besides," she finished, "she's doing you a favor. You'd lose your passengers to a bus if it weren't for her."
The coaches quivered. Mavis soon backed down into the carriage sheds.
"Morning,"
she stuttered as she coupled to the coaches.
"Morning,"
they replied, trying to sound friendly.
"Good luck, dear," smiled Henrietta. "You'll do splendid, I'm sure."
Mavis felt better hearing that, and set off for the station. The passengers were most intrigued to see Mavis at the platform. They greeted her warmly and told her how splendid she looked. She had never smiled so widely before. The guard blew his whistle, and she set off. Her giddiness made her start too quickly.
"Oh!"
cried Annie as their buffers clanged.
"I'm sorry,"
Mavis cried.
"That's all right,"
winced Annie, annoyed.
"Early days,"
murmured Clarabelle. Mavis couldn't go as fast as Thomas. The passengers didn't seem to mind, but Annie and Clarabelle were anxious.
"I hope we're not late,"
mumbled Annie.
"We're never late,"
fussed Clarabelle.
"I'm going as fast as I can,"
cried Mavis. Suddenly, a flash of red whizzed by on the roadside.
"What was that?"
cried Mavis.
"Trouble,"
sighed the coaches in unison. They found the flash of red at the next station.
My, said Bertie. "And I thought Thomas was slow."
"I beg your pardon?" asked Mavis.
"My passengers can't be kept waiting," continued Bertie. "They rely on us to be on time."
"I may not be as fast as Thomas," fumed Mavis, "but without me, you may not have had any passengers today."
"Another reason the road is more reliable than the rails," chuckled Bertie.
He honked his horn and whizzed off.
"Don't leave me waiting too long at the next station," he called.
Mavis was speechless, but the coaches certainly hadn't lost their voices.
"Oh, that wretched bus!"
fussed Annie.
"You pay no mind to him, dear,"
muttered Clarabelle darkly.
"At least our passengers are getting comfortable rides to the station. You're doing a fine job."
Mavis was surprised. She certainly hadn't expected compliments from the coaches. Even so, she wanted to pay Bertie back. Now, Bertie isn't a mean-spirited bus, but his competitive nature can get the better of him.
"Silly railway," he said smugly. "I can have my passengers up and down the line in half the time it takes them."
He chuckled as he raced down the road. His passengers hadn't expected to be bounced around so much. Mavis was having a wonderful journey. The sun shone, she was pulling the coaches well, and the passengers were very pleased. Further ahead, she thought she saw smoke by the line side. She slowed when she saw a man waving a red handkerchief. "Well, well, well," she chuckled. "What have we here?" Bertie straddled the side of the road. He was billowing smoke from his exhaust. His passengers stood crossly on the roadside. "Well, you see, we hit a pothole," explained the driver nervously, "and I suppose it must have damaged his engine some."
We could have avoided that pothole if you weren't driving like a maniac,
scolded a passenger, and the others rallied with him. The driver went as red as Bertie with embarrassment. "So much for being on time," Mavis remarked.
"I'm sorry," Bertie coughed sadly. "Please, will you take my passengers with you? They'll be stranded otherwise."
Mavis now felt sorry for Bertie and agreed to help out. His passengers clambered into Clarabelle, and soon they were off. In no time at all, they arrived at Farquhar. Toby was there, waiting to take over the train. He rang his bell excitedly as Mavis pulled into the station. The passengers poured out of the coaches, thanking Mavis and her crew. "The Fat Controller must be pleased," they said, "knowing he has a smart, reliable engine like you."
"Well done,"
smiled Toby.
"I'm very proud of you." "As are we," tittered Clarabelle. "Not too shabby for your first time pulling coaches." "Indeed," said Annie. "Perhaps Thomas should get boiler ache more often." Mavis blushed. "I do hope I'll get to pull you again sometime." With that, she tooted a friendly goodbye and set off for home.